Welcome to Vinexposium podcast on Wines of the Future. Where are we coming from? Where are we now? And where are we heading? My name is Gabrielle Vizzavona, and with top international experts, we'll be discussing the past, present, and future of the wine industry fast forwarding 50 years. Very happy to have Heini Zacchariassen as a guest for our Wines of the Future talk about wine retail and marketplaces. Hello, Heini.
Hey, how are you?
Good. And you?
Doing good, thank you very much.
Heini, you are credited with bringing a technology revolution to the wine industry by founding Vivino in 2010. It is an app dedicated to wine lovers that grew into a community of 60 million users, raised 221 million in funding, and rolled out a worldwide marketplace from 2016. You are a tech guy, and before starting Vivino, you co-founded several startups and were a part of building global internet and mobile security company BullGuard. You were named Entrepreneur of the Year by GP Bullhound in 2020. Your story is featured in an independent documentary, Disrupting Wine, The Life of an Entrepreneur, and you are also the host of a YouTube series, Raw Startup, which offers candid advice for entrepreneurs and startups. So, Heini, can you explain to us when and why you created Vivino?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so we started back in 2010, so quite a long time. We're in 2022, so it's 12 years ago now. And for me, I'm more of a tech guy, more of a builder, and I love solving problems. And as much as I loved wine, I was not a wine expert. I was really someone who loved wine but didn't know much about it. And for me, walking into a supermarket, it was really about seeing this wall of wine and thinking, what the heck do I buy? And really not understanding, why can I get a rating on a DVD or a piece of music? Even a taxi driver will have a rating today, but for some reason wine had no rating. That was supposed to be a secret. So basically that's why I created, so that casual wine drinkers, people that love wine, can figure out what's good and what's less good.
So it started as a social network around giving notes and comments, thanks to a label scanning recognition.
Yeah. If I can call, not that I have a problem with the word social network, but I would probably, you could call it a community or something like that, but really driven by the help that the tool provided, right? So that people give back to the community because. This helped me pick a fantastic wine last Saturday when I was on a date, right? So people give back to that community. So it's more that than a sort of social network. There are social aspects, more a community than a social network, I think.
The voice of the public.
Totally, yes.
And so it gathered an incredible community of 60 million users today.
Yeah.
And later in 2017, Vivino also switched into a marketplace. Was it the business model since the start?
It wasn't the business model, but it was the idea for a business model very early on. We were so fortunate that we could sort of sell to our investors and saying, hey guys, we're going to build this community, which is going to be massively big. And then at some point, we're going to build a business model on top of that. And yes, that was actually the idea from day one, which is quite rare for a startup. Usually you'd have to pivot 2 or 3 times before you find the right one. But yeah, we really wanted to build a marketplace from day one, but really started building, like you say, in 2016, 2017.
How easy in nature was that transition?
Yes, I would not use the word easy at all. No, it was really, really hard, right? I mean, you can call it transition, but really it's the core Vivino is still there and people love it. We sort of built the marketplace on top of that.
Right.
But it's a very, very complex operation. We have over 500 partners all over the world that sell through the app. So it's not been easy to do. And as you know, wine is complicated. There are literally millions and millions of wines out there, and there might not be any naming conventions. You have to figure out who's talking about what and so on. So really quite complicated, I must say. But we're pretty far now, and the user experience on buying now is really solid. So I'm really happy with how far we've come.
So how does that marketplace works?
Yeah, so we integrate with these, I think, just over 500 different partners. So let's say you're in France, for example. If you look at a wine in France, we say, hey, is any retailer selling this product right now? If they do, you can buy it through the app. You can use like Apple Pay or Google Pay. Within like literally seconds, you'll be able to buy that wine, and then whoever's the supplier will ship it to you. So they're fully integrated with us, and really quite a seamless experience.
What are the most unexpected changes that you acknowledged in the retail environment since you started Vivino?
It's an interesting question. Obviously, the big one is probably COVID, right?
Yeah.
So we were doing well before COVID, but then suddenly this explosion happened where people were at home, and e-commerce just blew up, and we literally in those crazy months we sort of doubled the revenue in 2020 in 1 year, but in those crazy months we saw like 3 times the sales of the same month the year before. So I think there's been a lot of changes due to that. First of all, e-commerce grew like crazy. Then it sort of bounced back, and now retail is back. So yeah, I mean, there has been a move to e-commerce, and I think there's a long-term move to e-commerce, even though there's a bounce back to classical retail. So I think COVID has really been the biggest thing, and it obviously came out of nowhere, right?
Yeah, we've seen there was really a switch during COVID. Will it become the dominating way to sell wine in a close future?
I think it might at some point. I would definitely not use the word close future. I think even sort of for general retail, for groceries and stuff, I think probably has taken longer than we expected. But people are switching now, right? These services that where you buy your groceries online, including wine, are just becoming more common because they're getting better and better, and people are getting more and more used to them. So over time, I think yes, I think it will. And sometimes what happens is that there's a tipping point. So as if the traditional brick and mortar retail gets pushed, maybe there used to be 100 stores, then there are 80 stores. People say, "Oh, there are fewer stores now. Now I might switch to e-commerce or online," right? So sometimes there's a tipping point, and suddenly things start moving fast. But I do not see this as something that happens in like 3 to 5 years. I think this is a 10, 15 years transition before we really see a tipping point.
Because this increased online competition with pricing that are more aggressive,
Yes.
could we imagine that it would be fully fatal to physical stores?
Meaning they totally disappear. I think physical retail offers something else, right? I think physical retail can be an experience, and the one thing about wine that we have to remember is that we try and provide you with as much data as we can, ratings and reviews and like personalization, but we can never have you taste the wine. And physical retail can do that, right? So I
Mhm.
think it's a restructuring of retail. And for example, when you go to a store, we always associate you go into a store, you buy it, and then you carry it home. Nobody says that's a rule. It could also be you go to a retail store, and let's say it's wine, you taste a few wines, you do a few clicks, and then actually there's a car driving around the city that actually delivers it at the same time as you arrive at home, right? Because wine is it breaks, it's heavy. So if that kind of service could also be interesting, right? And at the store, wine also fills up a lot of space, right? So there are many different models this can be done, and I think there's a transition coming in that space.
Can we imagine a massive actor offering a marketplace in quasi monopoly?
Even harder. It's an industry that takes longer to move. It's an industry with unlimited amount of different suppliers. So I think that's going to be really hard. The best thing we can hope for and others can hope for is to get a good piece of the market, and monopolies are really good for the user, really good for the buyer.
Are you aiming for this to become the largest actor in the?
So I definitely wouldn't mind being the largest. I just, I mean, having 10% would be amazing, right? That's pretty far from monopoly, but having 10% would be incredible. That's a really, really big player, right? So yeah, we definitely wouldn't mind being the biggest one. It doesn't necessarily mean that we want to be a monopoly, though.
Since a few years, we see Vivino appearing more and more in many of the European markets as well.
Yeah. So when it comes to information about wine, when it comes to ratings about wine, we're incredibly strong. Like nobody else has that information like we do. And the more people join the community, the more accurate it becomes, not just on rating, but actually what a wine tastes like and so on. So in that sense, getting real unbiased information, I really think we're by far the best, and incredibly happy with that we can help users even though we don't make money off that. Someone going into Lidl or a Carrefour to buy something, and we help them make the right decision. I think that makes me incredibly happy.
How many wines are rated on Vivino today?
Around 13 million. That includes vintages, around 13 million. Yeah. And we have just over 2 billion different pictures of wine bottles. So we have a lot of data.
So obviously you link the two platforms so that we can have the feedback about the wines from the community and at the same time using it as a marketplace, right?
Yes.
What crazy futuristic innovation can you imagine could fully change the landscape of online wine retail?
You're definitely getting into the big questions here. Huh? So, I mean, it's a really interesting thing. We were talked a little bit about it earlier. When it comes to the thing about wine is that you have to really taste it if you want to build a real preference for it. I mean, if you look at a piece of clothing, right, you can look at it on a picture and you almost consume it, right? Like, oh my God, she looks amazing in that, right? That is fantastic. But with wine, it is a little bit different, right? Because you could look at a wine and you're not feeling anything, right? Because you don't really taste it. So it does create some real barriers there. I think the biggest innovation that we want to help push is first you have all this data, then on top of that, building algorithms, AI, machine learning, whatever it is, to understand the taste really, really well, and also understand the taste of the user incredibly well, right? When you start matching those things, then you really can take down the risk of, hey, is this wine, are you going to love this wine or not? And I think there is some innovation there because the data set we have is very, very different. It's bigger than ever seen before. So there is room to do some really interesting stuff there.
And wine is linked as well a lot, wine tasting, with emotions
Yes.
and feelings. So do you think the machine will be able to express that?
It depends, right? I think the machine has to connect to taste and references of taste. But if you did a specific taste in a cellar at a specific point, that could be really hard for the algorithm to figure out, unless the algorithm says, it looks like this specific taste. I don't know why she loves that taste, but she does. And then you find that taste in different wines, and then it's so the algorithm sees that, wow, this does trigger an emotion with her. So in some cases, yes.
And this will use which kind of technology?
Yeah, well, it's all based on data. If you don't have the data, there's nothing you can do. If you don't have the full data on all these wines and also the users, it's really hard to do. And then you would put some machine learning, maybe some artificial intelligence on top of that to really make it smart. If you want to mention one other thing, I just think it's different. I mean, there is more and more talk about AR, augmented reality, where maybe some point in not that distant a future, we'll have these glasses you put on, and then when you walk into a retail environment, there's just going to be data everywhere, right? So it means that you have these glasses on, you look up on the wine shelf, and the rating is just connected to every single wine that's on the shelf there. You don't have to do anything on the shelf. We just pop up in front of you, right? So those kinds of innovations are also coming for sure.
And what about innovations directly linked to the sense? There was an application that was created a few years ago that was recreating scents. Could we imagine that for wine?
I think so. I mean, you also mean like almost printing wine a taste, right?
Mm-hmm.
I honestly think that is going to come at some point. I'm not very close to any of that research, but I think it's going to come. But at the same time, I'm not sure it matters that much. Meaning, we want the real story. I mean, I can have a Mona Lisa poster on my wall that I print on my printer. It's not quite the same as going to the Louvre and seeing the actual Mona Lisa, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think the real product's always going to be there, even if we find a way to copy it totally one-to-one. So yes, there is something there, but it's not the same thing. It's just a different thing.
What do you expect the taste of the wine to be like in 50 years' time? And can you describe the wine of the future?
I would turn that question a little bit in a different direction, and
Mm-hmm.
that's climate change, right? That
Right.
whatever wine you're making in Bordeaux right now, you're not going to make that wine 50 years from now. Whatever wine you make in Burgundy right now, you're not going to make that wine 50 years from now, right? So it is getting warmer and warmer. And I don't know how we are or they are going to deal with that, because it's going to be really hard to make the exact same wine 50 years from now. I'm just not sure how that can be done. So something has to happen there.
All right. Thank you so much, Heini, for your time.
You are very welcome. It's a pleasure.
Thank you for tuning into Wines of the Future. Don't miss the next episode and subscribe to this podcast. You can also leave us a comment and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Vinexposium.